Hello and welcome to the conference. My name is Eugene Lichkin. I am a teacher of English at the Moscow Public School number 1570 and also a thematic curator of the Moscow International Education Fair Shakespeare. This conference is for the teachers of English, and it's an honor to welcome you, bright and innovative educators, here at our conference. It's an honor to welcome you. In 2020, the Moscow International Education Fair held a conference for teachers of English, and this conference was based on two hypotheses. The first one was about the priority of the communicative context and priority of the communicative competence in the language teaching. And the second one was about the necessity of being up to date with the world, methods, and different approaches to teaching English. We discussed this hypothesis with different groups of people, with people who are right in the middle of the action, with the teachers, with students, with the leaders of educational communities, and with the business representatives. One of the main conclusions that we drew from this conference, let me quote, was that the purpose of learning English is to expand the boundaries, is to enter the broad communicative context of authentic modern English. This is a key to the successful socialization and to the higher quality of life in general. And with the start of this session, we would like to begin a new season of our conferences as well. We want to shift from just discussing big ideas in education to creating the system of professional, ongoing support for ELT community. English is everywhere. English is ubiquitous. And people learn it and people teach it everywhere in families, in schools, in kindergartens, in universities. People use online resources to study it by themselves. But the problems that they face are pretty much the same worldwide. And that's why it's pretty important to keep in mind that our students will speak English not only with the British or Americans. They will speak English with the Italians, with Finns, they will speak English with Japanese, they will speak English with all the people who learn it as the second or even the third language. And the local communities, local ELT communities of these countries have got a wealth of experience that they can share with us in order to help us to solve the problems that bother us every day when we enter our Russian English classrooms. Our chosen idea for this new season of our conference is English in the focus of international language learning practices. And every month we are going to have a session with the bright educators and practicing teachers in order to give you some ideas, in order to take some inspiration from the global ELT community, in order to provide the best experience and provide the best resources for your perfect English classes. And today we meet you in the welcoming studio of the Foxford Online School, which is open to preschoolers, 1st to 11th graders, and of course, teachers. Our today's topic is kind of controversial and very important for all of us. Of course, we're going to speak about coursebooks. What is it? Is it a staple item for all of us to base our teaching process on? Or is it more like a limit that keeps us and restricts us from being creative? There are a lot of different points of view on that, and it's not very usual to hear that we feel a certain pressure from the management, from the parents, from the students themselves, that we need to get through the whole course book. It means if we cover the whole book, that we will certainly achieve the new level of English, the new level of knowledge. But is it really so? Let's try to discuss it today with our panel of wonderful speakers. And let us pass over to the discussion. I'd love to present our wonderful panel of speakers, and I'd like to address a very short question in the beginning. So, dear speakers, dear guests, I would like to ask you a short question. What does it mean to work with the course book in your country? And let me ask it first to the editor-in-chief at the Title Publishing House, academic director at Sky Inc., Alexey Konobiev from Russia. Alexey, what will be your answer for this question?
Okay, well, I'd say there are two tendencies, and the tendencies are very, very separate from each other, because there are teachers who work at schools on a daily basis, and there are teachers who work there. They believe that they should follow the course book and use as much information from it as possible. And this is one of the primary goals, because they have the state-approved programs, and they need to comply with the program requirements. And there is another totally different and a very large group of teachers who believe that a course book is just a collection of ideas, and that a good teacher, as they say, should and sometimes even must add other materials to the course book. And frankly speaking, this is a very interesting and ongoing discussion between these two groups. And obviously, the people who believe that course books must be supplemented by something, they work more often as private teachers. So there are two very, very distinctive standpoints on this.
Okay, Alexey, thank you very much for your perspective on this question. And let me ask the same question to Associate Professor at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at the Indian Institute of Technology in Patna, Dr. Smriti Singh in India. So, Smriti, the same question for you. What is your opinion? What is your experience?
Good afternoon, everyone. So when we come to India, India has a very stringent examination pattern. This examination pattern treats English, or say, as a subject like all the other subjects, be it history, be it science, be it geography. So the textbook kind of becomes mandatory in the sense that at the end of the scholastic year, the questions are based on the things that you have in the textbook. So what you look as the ideal setup, where you talk about conversations and you talk about using a language in everyday life, that kind of gets lost. And the focus is on completing a syllabus, which is mandated as per the different government boards, and hence the course book becomes very important.
Thank you, Smriti. I think that's a nice
with
parallel.
That, so the politics behind the course book, which I guess we'll be discussing at some point of time. So over here, it's very difficult to move beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Smriti. I think that's a very nice parallel between that. Alexey has said before that sometimes, and in India we see it's like the prevailing situation, the course book is something that needs to be covered fully and thoroughly, yeah, from the beginning till the end. Thank you very much. And let's pass over the same question to the Associate Professor at Faculty of Foreign Languages Education at Gaziantep University, Dr. Emrah Chinkara from Turkey. Emrah, you are welcome.
I'm unmuted. Hello, everyone from Turkey. Actually, we have a similar situation with India because we have a very strong testing system and it is very centralized. So the strength of the test has a very negative washback effect on teaching and learning activities. And therefore, what you teach in the classroom actually is based on what you assess in the test, which is central and which is done by the Ministry of Education. So all the objectives of the test actually taught in the classroom, and those objectives or the test only has one skill, which is reading, not even listening, speaking, and writing. So there's one skill which is assessed in this strong test, and therefore this negative effect of the test is reflected in the class. And this approach is seen in the textbooks because the Ministry of Education produces their own textbooks and mandates all the schools of Ministry of Education to use that textbook strictly. So teachers do not have any, let's say, autonomy do not have any control on picking their own textbooks, let alone creating their own teaching material and using it in their own classroom, because it is very centralized and because there is a pressure of the test on the teachers, or even parents, even students, even administrators, school administrators push teachers to use specific materials, specific textbooks given by the ministry. We also have second kind of schooling system. They are also in the Ministry of Education system organization, but we can call them private schools. Parents need to pay to those schools, and private schools are more free in a sense that they can include more time for English, and they prepare students for the test. At the same time, they teach students in a communicative way by teaching all four skills, integrating those skills, and actually using life skills of English and using it in their own materials. They can create their own materials and they can pick their own textbooks. So they're a group of lucky organizations which work in a different way.
Yeah, thank you, Emre. And I think, you see, the situation is still similar to the situation in India and in Russia, I believe, yeah? Where textbook is something that you need to cover. It's like the textbook is a kind of preparation for the exam. Yeah, we're not speaking about communicative competence at the end of studying in the school. Yeah, we're not speaking about proving everything that we can do with English. Yeah, just speaking tasks and covering the textbook in general. But
there is
I hope
one more thing here is because the system pushes teachers to use a specific textbook. I mean, teachers do not have freedom to choose their own textbook.
Yes, I think we've got the pretty much same situation here in Russia, where we have a list of approved textbooks from which we can only choose one or two books that we can use in our work. Thank you very much, Emre. So far, the situation is not very positive, as we can see, but I hope that the things are definitely different in the Sunshine Brazil. So let's ask the English as foreign language teacher, teacher's trainer, materials writer, and project manager for Active English, James Taylor from Brazil. James, bring us some happy news.
No pressure. Good morning, everyone, as it is here. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this. I think when you talk about the situation in Brazil, the first context, and I'm sure you all appreciate this, is that it's a massive country, right? And so like pretty much anything that you can imagine is happening somewhere. I think that there's a lot of similarities to what's been said so far in terms of the importance of exams and how that has I would argue, negative impact on education in general here. And I think that again, similarities with the state mandated course books, which ones can be chosen and so on. So they're very similar situations. One thing that we haven't mentioned, which is becoming very, very important here, which is the rise of bilingual education, which is becoming very mainstream and is just growing and growing year on year. And so that, I think, also will have an interesting impact on how course books are used in the future. I think my role here probably is to seem like the person who's defending course books, which maybe is a bit ironic. If we get in, as this conversation will develop, you'll find out maybe. But what I would say is that my feeling about course books in general, not just in Brazil, but is the fact that most of the criticisms that come in the way of course books are generally not necessarily the fault of course books, but the systems that are around them. So that's sort of the thing that I think I'm interested in exploring today, is what is it that sort of puts the course book into that situation. I mean, and this is definitely true here in Brazil, and I'm sure it's true in other places as well.
Thank you, James. And I think that your idea is very interesting. You see, I would like to highlight it even a bit more. So as far as we can see, we've got two parallel worlds in each country. We've got a world of the public school where you cannot choose the course book, where you have to cover it from the beginning till the end. And you've got the world of the private teaching, where you can choose the best course book possible, where you can bring any other extra materials, where you can choose the world-class materials to your classroom, and where you actually concentrated on bringing the communicative approach, yeah, to bring in the communicative competence. And it's pretty interesting to take a look. So what can merge these two words? Is there a way? Can we find a way how to break this wall between these two words? Can we bring some authenticity to our public schools? Yeah, and how can we draw some experience from our worldwide colleagues? So I think we got a bird's eye view of what's going on in the global ELT community. And let's try to take a closer look at this problem. So I'd love to address my first special question to James. James, in your opinion, as a materials writer, what is the key secrets for a successful course book? And is it different for teachers and writers?
That's interesting. I'm going to answer that backwards. Okay, I'm going to deal with the second part first, because I think that's really interesting. So when I think about, okay, how is a course book successful for the author? Well, to be honest with you, I don't think that's really important. As an author, my measure of success is, if I'm happy with it, great. But are the teachers happy with it? Yes, I hope so, right? But the priority, the real people we need to be asking that question to and judging by is how successful it is with the students, right? Those are the people that we write the books for, okay? And so, and I think it's simple in a lot of ways, because essentially my job when I write books is to make sure, is to do the best I can so that when the students are going through this process of using these books, their English is improving, right? That's my primary job. And if I can help them do that, then that's a success. The course book is not everything, right? The course book can't do everything. It can't guarantee that the students will be successful if they don't do any work, right? Frankly, right? They got to do the work as well. So it's part of the process. And I think that the nature of the course book is the fact that course books exist because teachers, the reality for teachers is that, we can talk about bringing in materials and creating our materials and those. Firstly, that's a skill that you need to be trained for. Just because you're a teacher doesn't mean that you know how to create good materials. It's not a given, right? I mean, a lot of teachers can, I know, but it's not automatic. And secondly, it's about time, right? It takes a lot of time to create good materials. And so if that's what you want teachers to do, then we kind of have to change the whole ecosystem of how teachers work and get paid and how many hours they have and everything. And because that is not the reality, they need a course book, right? They need that course book there, which has done that work for them, okay? Not all course books are the same. Some are great, some are terrible, depends what you get, right? Some will work very well in Brazil and maybe not work so well in Russia, or they'll work great with that class and not with that class. And, it's not a guaranteed formula for success, and it shouldn't be treated that way. So, I feel like it's what makes a successful course book is, it's hard. It's very hard to do, and I think people have to recognize, that it doesn't, just because this course book isn't quite right for your group doesn't mean it's bad. It just maybe not quite the right fit. But as a writer, my priority is to, of course, develop do what I can to help develop the English of the audience, whoever that audience is that's using this book, whether that's age group or, the type of school or whatever. And it's to try and do more than just teach a language as well. That's always my priority as a language teacher, as a materials writer and a language teacher, is to do more than just like help improve language, but also to improve their understanding of the world and other skills as well, which maybe we can talk about if we have the opportunity. So I guess what I'm saying in summary is that's a really complicated question.
Yes,
and I could talk about it for hours.
That's why we're discussing it here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you. James, in your talk, you've said a very nice idea that sometimes we cannot choose, and in most of times, sadly, we cannot choose the course book, and definitely there are different ones. And also you mentioned that of course, we do not have enough time. We as teachers do not have enough time to design our own materials, and we do not have enough time to keep in mind all the things that we need to structure. And if we push this situation to the maximum, does it mean that we are dependent on the course book? We as teachers, does it mean that we depend from them?
Well, depends how you define depend, right? If you define depend as like needing it because the teachers, we don't have time to go and create a full course, all the course content for a full syllabus for however many groups we have, then yes, we do. And given the circumstances, I think, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I think that it's good that teachers have that help. What you hope is that the course books that the teachers use and that the students have fulfill their needs, and that then will go into the place of, okay, then the people who are choosing these books, who are they? How do they make these choices? Do they talk to teachers and students about the, you know, so what's that decision? It depends on the
context. Yeah, it depends on the context.
Yes,
okay,
always.
I see you, James. Yeah, thank you very much for answer. And I think that I can pass over this question to Emra. So Emra, can you enlighten us? What is coursebook dependency and what makes a teacher dependent or independent on a coursebook? So can you provide us with some extra information on that?
Okay. First of all, thank you, James, for this kind of introduction on the how necessary that we need course books in the class and what the reality actually teachers actually having in their day-to-day lives, so that they need textbooks, right? This is something we have to see. The second thing is textbooks are not the core of teaching. Textbooks should not be the core of classroom activities, classroom interaction, because each class, each group of students are different. They have their own unique profiles, they have their own unique needs, and the teacher is there facing these needs one-to-one with the students. And the teacher should have the responsibility, should have the autonomy to observe the class, to observe the group, and work with the textbook. And when it is needed, to modify it, to change it, to alter, maybe just take out some parts of the activity or change the instructions or modify it, paraphrase it. I mean, textbook should not be the core of what we do as teachers in the class.
So it's like a students first approach.
Yes, actually, because as James suggested, the subject of learning action is students. As teachers, we cannot make them learn, because I mean, I cannot open up their brains and put everything in their brains. So they should have this responsibility. They should have learner autonomy, and they should be active. They should participate in class activities. So a textbook writer like James has a lot of experience and puts a lot of effort in the textbook, but it doesn't mean that it will fit into my own context as a teacher. So as a teacher, I know my own context better than anyone else, and with my experience with my students and with the textbook, I know what is missing for this context in the textbook, and I should have the ability, I should have the autonomy, and I should feel the responsibility to fill in some extra materials, some extra activities, some modifications whenever required in the textbook.
And Emra, does it mean that you, so every time when you try to adapt the course book, does it mean that you become the co-author of this course book? Does it mean that we need to write all the names of all the teachers in the world at the front page of our course books as the co-authors?
Yes, actually, indeed. I mean, I don't know whether James will be happy with it, but it is the case.
The cover will be extra long, I suppose, with all the names.
Whenever I teach in the class, I start with the textbook, and I have the freedom to change parts, to modify activities, and to paraphrase instructions with my own students. And they can do some modifications as well, because in my classes, students have control over the activities we do, right? Therefore, not just teachers, but students too, Eugene.
So everyone becomes the co-author of the course book.
Yes, because the students are responsible for their own learning.
I see. That's a very nice idea, actually, to highlight this. We cannot make the students learn. They need to be responsible for it. Emrah, I also know that you have done a very impressive research on the topic of the course book dependency. And can you present us with some data from it?
Okay. You know, I am also the director of a School of Foreign Languages, and sometimes the coordinators and teachers complain about coordinators and say, some teachers come and say, today I covered 2 pages and this week I will finish unit 2. And then I will go like, so what do your students feel about it? What did your students do? You finished 2 pages, but what did students do, right? So teachers should not feel the urge to finish the textbook, because textbook is not the core of teaching. And if you feel like the textbook is the core of teaching, then I can tell you are kind of dependent on the textbook. Because with my study, I have seen that only out of 300 teachers, just 12 of them had this feeling that textbooks could be complementary, textbooks could be modified and changed. But unfortunately, most of them felt like they have to do whatever given in the textbook because of certain reasons, like James suggested, they don't have time, or they have to cover certain pages because there is a test, etc., because of institutional reasons. If you move on to next slide.
And I think it's totally true here in Russia, when in May you try to catch up with all the units that you haven't covered before. So you try to get 3 or 4 units in a matter of a week. So that's particularly true here in Russia as well.
Yes, unfortunately, that's one of the biggest reasons of textbook dependency on teachers' side. Okay, I asked teachers some questions to find out. I mean, not for me. These are just like self-report questions. When I asked them, are you looking for a textbook that fits for all teaching conditions? Then they answer these questions. Most of the time they say, yes, I would be happy if I can find a textbook which fits in all situations. Like, as James suggested, it is almost impossible to find a textbook which could fit in all contexts. Then next question, when was the last time you changed an activity in the textbook, or you omitted an activity in the textbook? Like if the teacher says 2 months ago, 3 months ago, or never in this term, like, then depending on the answer, when was the last time you wrote your own lesson plan? Like, because as teachers, you know, not all the time, but we have this competency to create our own lesson plans, because we have objectives, and you can teach those objectives in millions of different ways. And these activities, these materials, these tasks should be selected, should be organized.
So you need to invest a lot of time, basically, in it.
Yes, that's true. You need a lot of time. But as a teacher, if you never created a lesson plan for a semester, then you are dependent on the textbook.
So you're just retranslating the knowledge, So you are not aiding anything by yourself. You're just being a retranslator, to put it shortly.
That's right. And British Council had a kind of survey in Turkey in 2015. And one of the questions was for the teachers, what do you think was the major source of motivation in language classes, English classes? And you see, it is the second one, the third one from the bottom, course books. right? Students are not interested in course books actually.
Yeah, that's
right?
not what makes
That's
English
motivation.
interesting. Yeah, not
Yes.
about the pictures in the course book, not about the texts in the
Yes.
course book. Something else. Something
Yes.
else is valuable.
Yes, and if you move on to next slide, it is actually, I mean, I don't want to be mean on textbook writers, because another question was in that the same survey. Another question was, did you receive any kind of training on the textbook, right? Because writing a textbook, the author or the textbook has a kind of design, layout, activities, organization, etc., and they have their own teaching rationale, teaching theory, and they reflect it in their own textbook. But it doesn't mean that teachers are aware of it and teachers are actually able to use it in their own classrooms. Therefore, getting training on how to use textbooks is important. But in this survey, the teachers said, 24% of the teachers said they have never received any kind of training on how to use a textbook.
So basically, they try to understand what did the author mean in the course book.
Yes.
Yeah, they're trying to decipher it.
Yes, and in class, I also do some class observations, and we use great textbooks, but some teachers are not even aware of the basic objective of a certain activity, and they just remove it. They just do it in a different way, and they lose the whole point in the unit because of missing just one point.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that the author of that textbook based everything on that activity, on that small activity, and build all the other activities on it. But the teacher, because the teacher did not read the manual,
missed the keys, yeah, missed the necessity for it.
And this is actually, I feel like this is because of heavy dependence on the textbook. So the teacher is so confident that textbook will work fine.
Yes, I think that's like the result of your speech is pretty much motivating. Yeah, no needs to be dependent. No needs to be dependent. James, how can you relate to the Emra's words? So how often do your teachers or students misinterpret any of your ideas from the course book? Is it often?
I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to come back to that. No, I mean, a lot of what Emra said, I totally understand, but I feel like the main issues that come out of that for me are, as you addressed there, like, you know, we say when you're skipping parts, what does that mean, right? Because like you said, you know, if they skip the wrong one, then the whole lesson stops making sense, right? You know, I always have that slight mixed feelings as someone who, you know, I have done that. I've taught lessons with other people's course books and gone, I don't need to do that. Let's change this. You know, I've done it. But then as a writer, I know how carefully I put everything in the right place so they all make sense, that there's a flow, right? And so then the idea of people going in and going, oh, I don't need this, I don't need this. It's a bit like, makes me go a bit like, oh, okay.
Yeah. They're like messing with your masterpiece. You see, messing with your brainchild.
Well, I don't want to go too far, but yeah, there's a bit of that. So I think that, you know, I think that I've done a bit of teaching observation as well, and like, you know, something you see happen, you know, is like when teachers start to run out of time because they spend too long at the beginning and then they don't have enough time for the end, which is the bit that really should count, and they go, okay, I'm going to skip the pronunciation activity, for example, right? Because and then you end up with students who could go like weeks, months without ever doing in pronunciation, which is a disaster.
Always omitted because it's always somewhere in the end.
And it's easy to sort of skip out without interrupting the flow. So I think that if, in order for skipping to happen, you know, it has to be principled, right? The teacher has to know what they're doing. So I absolutely agree with Emra when he says that, you know, they need training on what is supposed to be happening in this lesson. If that's the basis of it, then I don't have a problem with it. And then the other quick point I want to make is about this idea of when you have to rush because you've got to teach this number of lessons to fit in. You know, again, I'm going to defend the course book here and say that's not the course book's fault, right? That's the fault of the syllabus, of how the institution is organized. If it's being rushed,
course book
there may be something wrong
here.
Right?
Course book is nothing wrong.
the way it's being taught, who knows, right? But there's many other factors. I don't think it's necessarily the course book's fault, and I teach adults privately nowadays, one-to-one, which is a lovely way to teach because I work for myself and I can choose whatever materials I would like.
Yeah.
So I'm
It's
very
the best
lucky,
situation
very privileged.
possible, I suppose. Well, you can
I love it.
use anything that you like.
Yeah, and so with the materials that I use, we can take as long as we want.
Yeah.
Right. And then so we can go into some areas and then not spend so long on other areas because I know what my students need. Right. And then so that whole issue I don't have. So then the course book could work really well for me. So again, I'll just say, I'm going to say that one,
yes,
it's not the course book's fault.
I see. Thank you, James. Thank you. So you see, I really like the interconnections between your two points of view. And I think let us try to push this idea of no needs to be dependent to the extreme. So, and I'd like to address this question to Smriti. Is it possible to teach without a course book at all? So what conditions do we need to have in order to do it, to work without a course book?
Okay, it's been interesting hearing James and Emra. So if I talk of my context and whether it is possible to teach without a course book, then I would actually divide first the context into the different levels of education. So you have the school level, you have the college level. At the school level, see, India's problem is what you would call the extra large size of the classrooms. So you have 40, 50, or maybe 60 students in a classroom. So in that case, the textbook or the course book is actually like the holy grail for the teacher. You're saved. You have the activities pre-designed, pre-planned. You just have to implement them. But then again, with that extra large size, implementation is difficult. So there we again have this whole concept of the private school, the public schools. So public schools have right now, they've gone on to the government pattern where we have the National Council for Education, Research, Training, which is writing textbooks. So those textbooks actually cater to the Indian cultural contexts. So while the public schools may have, say, poems or stories which deal with certain regional aspect, which an Indian student would be familiar with, the books that are used in the private schools may have something with which the common Indian children are alien to. So say a poem like Daffodils, where the Indian child doesn't actually know what the daffodils are. Right, and having a poem on, say, sparrows, which an Indian child gets to see daily, the effect is different. So now if we are to get out of the textbook culture, if we don't want to be dependent on the textbook, the onus then goes on to the teacher. So the teacher has to see that you don't have an examination system which is testing your ability to memorize answers, memorize the vocabulary, memorize the grammatical structures.
So, Smriti, does it mean that we need to change the whole system, not to teach for exams, but to teach for actually using the language?
Yeah, teach things as a life skill.
I see.
You should know a language because it's a skill that is going to help you develop yourselves. You don't study the language or, in fact, any subject just because you have to get good grades in that subject.
I see. So it's like it's a big shift in minds, yeah, not only in the curriculums, not only in the classrooms.
But yes, in the minds.
So the main the main condition is to change the whole educational system in the world, as it seems from your words. So and I think
at least not in the world. At least India actually needs a major revamping. Like we are so much dependent on the results, say the class 10 results, the plus 2 results, for a student to move forward. Right?
And
like most other places.
I think the same situation comes to Turkey and comes to Russia and Brazil as well. I think that's not only the Indian situation. Right.
So you need, at every point we're like talking of marks. You need marks. And then, like, when I come to the college level, I have students who may have fetched, say, great marks, but when their ability to communicate comes in,
Yeah,
they really
yeah.
fail.
So it's not, communication is not all about the marks, as I can see. Yeah, thank you, Smriti. I really
if you
like your
want
point.
to be competent in using a language, as teachers, we need to move beyond that sense of dependency on the course book and maybe use the course book as a tool.
Yeah, I see.
Right, it's a tool, it's an aid, right?
Tools
So
of
as
trade
James,
for teachers.
right, as James said, we cannot create all the materials all the time. The textbook is one big tool.
Great.
So, like, I don't know whether you're aware, but like in most of the private Indian schools, there is a reader called Gulmohar. That has kind of withstood the test of time in the sense that it's been there in most schools for maybe 20, 30 years.
I see.
It's only with the new schools that you'll find new books. And that book, I mean, as Emra was discussing, that you leave out an activity, it didn't describe activity as an activity, but there would be a set of exercises.
Yeah.
But
That's
the
what
teacher had to
James
be
said
pretty,
before, right? And Emra said as well. Yeah. That's
right,
pretty
and
much
you have to
relates
be
to the points of view.
pretty smart enough as a teacher to make use of those exercises in your class. If you did that, you are in a win-win situation. You don't do that, you actually lose out.
Yeah, that's a pretty much
to what
a
is-
nice summary. Thank you very much, Smriti. Like a motto that we need to revise every time when we enter the class. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to give the words to Alexei. Alexei, I want you to relate to all the other speakers' speeches. And I'd like to ask you, how can we relate to these viewpoints from the Russian perspective? So what would you say?
Well, I'd say that in Russia, we have a lot in common with what has been said today. And we have touched upon so many very important questions, like, for example, what is a perfect book, a perfect textbook? And frankly speaking, my answer to that question would be, I don't know. And I wish I knew. But I believe that there are different criteria for the effectiveness and the goodness of textbooks for different situations. Like, for example, of course, every publisher wants a textbook to be a very, very long-lasting project. Like, for example, look at the brilliant English Grammar News series, which has been around since mid-1980s, and everybody knows and loves them because those books are very, very convenient to use. At the same time, there are certain textbooks which are doomed to stay not for very long. Like, for example, in Russia, as some of our listeners certainly know, there is a situation in which the final state exam the format of many tasks in the final state exam has been changed, and it will continue to change for the next couple of years. And for example, right now there is only one textbook by two Russian authors, Marina Gadjieva and Elena Medjibovskaya, that have published a training series of textbooks for this exam, for this format. And I have no doubts that very soon many more other books will appear. But as soon as there will be another change in the format, those books will become obsolete. So the longevity of textbooks is not always the same. And we have to choose some of them. If we think about whether a teacher can teach without a textbook, like to so many other questions, the answer would be yes, but. Because when you develop your own course, when you develop your own materials, that means that you're basically creating your own textbook, whether it's a good one, whether it's not very good one. And the danger here is that it will not be very systematic, so that you may have fun with your students at every lesson. But then again, when you look back, you will see that they have picked up a number of words. They have used to use.
There is no system in this knowledge.
Exactly. But it's not really communicative competence. It's rather having fun. So that's another thing that a textbook can help you with. Just basically to sum it up, I'd say that the situation is very similar. And I also hold this idea very dear to my heart, that a textbook should be a useful tool for the teacher, not a limiting tool, but something that should be the teacher should be able to change. They should be able to supplement if needed, but supplementing a textbook should not be a goal in itself, as it seems to be the case in some cases. And finally, the teachers should know how to be flexible about textbook, how to adapt tasks without shifting the focus away from the grammar, from the vocabulary, from the other skills needed, but
From
rather
the
how
author's
to adapt text for the
intentions
students.
as well.
Yeah, exactly, because sometimes the author may introduce a very, very interesting methodology in the textbook. And the problem is that the teachers just will not, it will not be so very obvious for the teachers. So it has to be explained in the teacher's book. But the problem is that some teachers just don't like to read the text, the teacher's book. They say, okay, I'll just do exercise 1 with my students, then I'll move on to the exercise 2, I'll move on to the exercise 3, and what can possibly go wrong? And we all know how many things can go in a totally unplanned way in a lesson.
How can the lesson be derailed, totally derailed from it?
Absolutely,
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alexei. I'd like to ask you the final question, a pretty short one, just to summarize everything that we've said here. So, can you please finish the phrase? Just add a couple of words. Working with the course book means something. So, James, how would you end this phrase?
Oh, why did I have to go first? Working with the course book means that you have to work with it, right? That's the key preposition there, is working with the course book, right?
Yeah, with the course book, yeah. So, thanks.
It's not the be all and end all. It's not everything. It's there to help you to achieve your goals with your students. So you have to realize what the course book's strengths are and then use those to your advantage.
Thank you. Thank you. Words of wisdom. Thank you. Spriti, how would you finish this sentence?
Working with the course book means an interesting aid to keep the parents at bay.
That's a pretty ironic, thank you. A very nice addition to this sentence. Thank you very much. Thank you. Emra, how would you finish this sentence?
I would be creative and say working with a course book is like having a compass as a captain on a stormy weather in the teaching ocean.
Okay, very poetic. Very poetic. Thank you for the metaphor. Alexei, so try to summarize it. So what does it mean for you to work with the course book?
Well, for me, I finished the sentence this way. Working with a course book means that you have scaffolding, but you should use it wisely.
Great, great ideas. So thank you very much for your ideas. Thank you very much for your presentations. Thank you very much for your perspectives. I think that our viewers can take any perspective that they like the most. And also they've been looking at different ways of thinking how to work with the course book. And I hope that after our session, they will find the best answer for themselves. Thank you very much. See you on the next stage of our session. Let's move beyond the discussion, which, as we can see, this problem that we've discussed before is as ubiquitous as English learning and teaching itself. It's present in practically all the countries all around the world. So let's try to move to workshops. Let's try to see the specific solutions and how can we deal with course books in our classes. And today we have two brilliant educators who are going to share their different perspectives on how to tackle this problem in the best way possible. And let me present our workshop speakers. Alex Vos, Director of Studies at Windsor English Language School and also a CELTA trainer. Alex, welcome. And also I'd like to present Elena Peresada, who is the founder of one of the most famous and one of the biggest Russian LT communities training English. Elena, welcome.
Hello.
Elena, Alex, and before we start, I'd like to ask you one question. What is the title of your workshop and how does it reflect your attitude towards the course book? So, Elena, what about you?
So, my topic is how to gamify your course book, as I believe that a textbook or a course book, it's like guidelines for any teacher. And I don't feel that I'm skillful enough and qualified enough to develop my own curriculum. That's why I use and I tell all my teachers who I work with just to use a course book, but you have to know how to cook it. And so I'm going to talk about some interactive activities which you can use instead of boring exercises.
I see. So how to become a co-author of the authors for this student's book, as we mentioned before in our conversation. Thank you, Elena. Alex, what about you?
So my talk is called Authentic Receptive Skills Tasks. And something that I'm very keen on is authenticity in the classroom. There are different ways we can be authentic. We can use authentic materials, we can use authentic tasks, and we can focus on language being more authentic. One area I find that people don't tend to think about but being more authentic with is the receptive skills. So productive skills, people can think of productive tasks that are very authentic. But in terms of what do we do with reading and listening, I find that course books tend to treat them in very similar ways a lot of the time. And so I'm going to try and present some other options that we might have instead.
Will you present us an option how to make authentic exercises and authentic tasks for unauthentic books as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the time we have to work within authentic material. We don't have a choice perhaps, but we can try to do more authentic things with that same material. So using, for example, a job advert in the same way that someone who's actually reading a job advert would use that.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think that our today's workshop are similar in a way, but still have their own differences. So we've got a passing trophy of our clicker here, and I would like, Alex, we would like you to present your workshop to our viewers. So feel free to start.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, everybody. So as I say, I'm talking today about authentic receptive skills tasks. So I've got a little task for you to begin. Okay, so I'd like you both to imagine that you see a headline like this in the newspaper or on the news. What questions would come to mind if you saw this?
How can fast food be good for you?
Says who, basically? Who's the author who's presenting this idea?
Absolutely. Any others?
So maybe have they invented like new type of fast food?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this headline flies in the face of what we know generally. So we'd probably have quite a few questions. These were some of the ones I came up with. Who says this? In what way is it good for you? Is it good for your physical health, your mental health? How was this decided? Is it a point that there's scientific consensus on? Which fast food specifically? How much and how often is it okay? Just a bit of bad news for everyone. Fast food is probably not good for you. So please don't take that away from this session.
We do not advocate fast food here at the MF Shakespeare at all, so please.
But what's the takeaway from this session today? So the first thing is that we read or listen with a purpose. And the purpose that we have changes depending on the text or that we're listening to or reading. And so I think when we're designing these tasks, it's good to think about how do people actually interact with these kinds of texts. And in methodology books on reading and listening, I've noticed that they always tend to start off in the introduction by explaining that we read and listen in different ways. And then they go on to say, here's one framework to deal with all reading. And
one size fits all.
Exactly, yeah. So just a few points I want to make about authentic tasks before we go further is, firstly, they can be done with authentic or inauthentic text, as you asked me. And they can also be combined with the inauthentic tasks that you might have already in the course book. It's just about trying to move towards a position of more authenticity. So I've got 4 examples. The first one I just mentioned before about job adverts. So when you're applying for a job, do you just read one advert or many?
Okay, I don't remember when
When was the last time?
When was the last time? Yeah, when I applied for a job, maybe like 25 years ago.
Yeah, but generally speaking, you're trying to catch as many adverbs as possible in order to take the best one.
Sure, absolutely. And then in what way do we read a job advert? So
Scan them, yeah.
Yeah.
possibly.
Looking for the keywords, yeah, that you
Well,
the highest number of the salary. Yes, is the first thing.
Sure. So salary tends to be very important. So I have a possible lesson plan that we could do with job adverts. So first of all, you could collect several job adverts from different sources, and you could find ones that are in the course books and ones that are online as well, so some authentic materials. We give students some criteria for looking at these adverts, and they might be able to come up with their own criteria, but usually location and salary are the top two. We can then have students scan these adverts to find adverts that meet those criteria. So this is going to be reading for specific information. We then might follow that up by having them skim the adverts that they have left to decide if it's a job that sounds good to them or not. Maybe it's got all the right features, but it doesn't really sound that good in the end. So then again, they can discard the ones that don't sound interesting. And then they can read the advert more deeply to decide if they actually have the skills that are needed to do this job. So we've got a nice sequence of different types of reading that we're doing with the same material. And the point is that when we read a text, we often don't just read one text, we read lots of texts, and then we decide on the ones that meet our goals most. Another suggestion is with recipes. I like cooking Indian food. People might gather from this. So I've got a recipe there for butter chicken. And if I'm picking up a recipe, one of the first things I'm going to do is to see if I have the ingredients to actually make this recipe. So you have a picture of some of the spices that I have.
That's only some of them.
That's only some of them. I actually have quite a range of spices in my kitchen. Yeah. And so I would get the students to have a look at these ingredients and decide, do I have everything that I need? What else do I need to make this dish? And you might notice as well, for some of these things, it says, for example, fresh garlic, and there's actually garlic powder, ground garlic there. So you can then have a bit of a discussion as well about whether that's a reasonable substitute or not. We might then move to the procedure for the recipe. And here, the goal is to get the students to match the pictures to the stages of the text. So this is something that we would do when we're actually cooking the dish. We might actually stop and look at the pictures with the recipe to decide, does mine look like this or not? In my case, it's often not.
Has something gone wrong terribly during the process? Expectations and reality,
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think, again, this is an important thing when we're reading or listening. We often stop and compare with reality what we've actually
So again, it's all about the exposure to the real life examples. It's not only that it's written in our course book, it's all about the real life around us.
Well, sure, absolutely. So, I mean, you could find a recipe in the course book, possibly, and make it.
And see what we will get.
Absolutely, yeah. Get the students to make it and bring it to class, obviously. That bit's important. Moving on to listening. We might get weather reports in the course book. This is one that I might do with an authentic or inauthentic weather report. I want you to just imagine for the moment that you're in the UK, and two questions. What weather would you like tomorrow?
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Rainy.
You want rainy weather?
Why not?
It can be any weather you want. Any weather you want.
But, well,
we want to highlight, you see, the typical British weather. We want to, how to say, to feel the full atmosphere of it. Enjoy every raindrop.
You want that full cultural experience, I guess it wouldn't be an authentic experience to go to Britain and have sunshine. But personally, I would like it to be sunny tomorrow and 30 degrees. And then what would you like to do, assuming that you have that kind of weather?
Well, I'd like to go to the seaside, probably.
Yeah. Just walk around the city, I suppose. Yeah, just enjoy the atmosphere, look at the people, listen to the authentic speech as well. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So for me, I'd like to perhaps take a walk in the forest. A walk on the beach sounds nice as well. So we're going to listen to a weather forecast now, and I'd like you to just think about whether you would like to change your plan. So let's listen.
Okay, let's do it.
Good evening. Storm Hannah is now bearing down upon us. The winds are escalating, and with a storm with severe gales this late in the season when the trees are in full leaf, we are anticipating some issues, some problems, some disruption, and many will feel its effects before the end of play tomorrow. In fact, through the night, the winds get up to severe gale force. We'll have heavy rain blowing in as well, so temperatures no concern, but the winds really are. Gusts of 70 miles an hour around the coast, 55 potentially inland. Is really quite stormy. And couple that with some really rather wet weather for Northern Ireland, Northwest England, Wales and the Midlands throughout tomorrow, with those winds just continuing to pummel in, and clearly temperatures are going to struggle. Barely single figures where we have that rain, barely making 10 or 11. To the north and south, a little bit more showery, a little bit more brightness.
Okay, so having just listened to that, we can ask the students whether they would change their plan. I think, given that the stormy weather that they've just heard about, probably they don't want to go for a walk on the beach anymore, or to.
When you're given a chance to visit the UK, I think you would not change anything, even if there's a hurricane. So that's your time in the UK, so I must take everything from this travel.
I accept it's probably different for people who normally live there and tourists to the UK,
Yeah.
definitely.
And English teachers from Russia.
Yeah, and English teachers from Russia, obviously.
Mhm. So, I mean, when we listen or read to information, it actually changes who we are in a way. It changes what we want to do, our dreams, what we know. So it's useful, I think, to think about how the information we're getting is actually shaping us as people as well. And so the final activity I've got is a conversation. Now, there are two problems, I think, when it comes to trying to put authenticity into listening conversations. The first one is it's actually hard to find good recorded conversations. But as I say, we can do these kind of activities with inauthentic conversations as well. A bigger problem is that when you're listening to a conversation, you can't actually be an authentic participant of that conversation. You're just listening to it. Exactly, yeah. So you can't actually shape that conversation in any way. But we can still try and do some things that might that might make it a bit more authentic. So I have one about somebody who took a trip to Canada. So 3 weeks ago, your friend went to Toronto in Canada to meet his uncle. And you think...
Good for him, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially in these times when travel is so difficult.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You think that he's back in town now, so you phone him. What questions would you ask your friend?
How was it?
Okay,
So
yeah.
Did you enjoy your trip?
Absolutely.
Have you brought me a bottle of the maple syrup?
Yeah.
So nice.
Yeah, that might be my first question, actually. What did you get me? Okay, so some of the questions that we might ask are, as some that you've said, and also things like, are you back? When did you get back? How was Toronto? Did you meet your uncle? And of course, how was the weather? Because
Yeah.
British people always talk about weather forever. So we're going to listen to the recording. While you're listening, do they actually talk about these questions, and what other things do they talk about? Okay, let's listen.
Gene, hi.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
Good, good.
Wait a second. I'm not calling you in Canada, right? You're back now, aren't you?
Yeah, I got back 2 days ago.
Oh, good. Phew. Because I wouldn't want to be calling you long distance without realising it and suddenly...
You spent a fortune on a long distance call. No, I know, it's okay. I actually wouldn't answer the phone while I was over there if I saw the call was coming from England. But no worries, we're in the same country now.
Yeah. So, how was the trip? Did you meet your long-lost uncle?
I did, actually. It was very good. I flew to Toronto and stayed there for a few days. At first, I was really worried about my accommodation because I kept reading these appalling stories about rental flats going all wrong.
Oh, was it one of those?
Yeah.
My friend had a disastrous experience in Barcelona with one of them. The place didn't look anything like the photos, and all the neighbours hated that there was a holiday flat in their building. Awkward situation. Ugh.
Right. So as a...
Okay, so as we heard, they asked, when did you get back? How was Toronto? Did you meet your uncle? We didn't hear them talk about the weather, but they do talk about that later in the conversation. I just trimmed it for our purposes today. And of course, we heard them talk about accommodation as well. So the next thing we might do is we might ask the students what they would still like to know about this person's trip to Canada and what questions they would ask. And the reason why we might do this is because when we're listening or reading, we often form expectations or opinions even about what we're reading or listening to. And so we often want to interact with it. And also at the same time, these questions or ideas that the students have can actually reveal a lot about what they actually understood about it. I think sometimes you get some questions that just focus a lot on very specific details, or maybe they focus on some of the bigger details, and students really pick out some very interesting things that you never actually imagined they would take away from that listening.
And again, that's a big difference between like the real life scenario of listening for information and the scenario that is produced inside the course book. Yeah, because when we need to listen to true, false, not stated type of tasks, it's not really going to happen in real life actually. But yeah, what you say, it's of course we're going to find out some similarities, we're going to find some extra details and so on and so forth. So adding more life to even to listening, to reading and so on. That's a pretty nice idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So the final thing that I'd just like to talk about, whenever I talk about reading and listening, people always ask me about how do I get my students to read and listen outside of the classroom? And that's a very difficult thing. And certainly most of the course books I've worked with, I don't think actually do much to encourage that. So I think we can all agree that students need that exposure outside the classroom. Just coming to class twice a week isn't really enough to get to make decent headway in learning a language. So we need to encourage them to read and listen for pleasure, as we do. We read and listen to things for pleasure. And when we do that, we don't actually have tasks that we do. We just read, we just listen. I think in class you can still get students to discuss what they've been reading, what they've been listening to. You can maybe set them something to read or listen to, and then have them talk in groups about what they read in their own words, whether they liked it or not. If they didn't like it, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. We don't like everything we read. And maybe what they would like to read or listen to next. And then that can help you to find them things or point them in the direction of things that they can read or listen to. I think it's quite important, though, not to force those conversations too much. So let them develop quite organically. Really.
Natural and organically, I agree with you. So it's pretty much, so it's very interesting to see that when we speak about course books and when we speak about textbooks, we always try to do our best because, we need to do all of these tasks for listening. We need to do all these tasks for reading and writing, of course, writing a letter or an essay for Russian national exam. Of course, it's a crucial skill to have if you want to pass the exam. But you see, that's a very nice approach to do it. So let's add more life to the lessons. Let's think how we usually do it. And I think it's like the key secrets. So if we speak about, communicative competency, we need to add the ability to show it. We need to add the ability to reflect and to respond to way like we would do it in a real life.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's what I really try to go for and try to encourage my teachers to go for as well.
Great, Alex, thank you. And can you tell us where to find inspiration if you want to make these type of tasks, and if you want to make them as many as possible, where to find inspiration for these type of tasks?
I mean, that's a good question. I feel like it's a bit of a mindset, really, that you have to want to find authentic things to do. And I think once you start looking for authentic things, you start thinking about the things that you do on a day-to-day basis, and you pick up text and you start thinking about, how am I actually reading this text? How am I actually listening to this thing? And taking information in and processing it. So I think really, as much as possible, I think just look at what you do and what other people do.
Don't you have some kind of guide? Okay, step one,
Listen to yourself.
Step 3. That might be very helpful. And then you can develop, well, as a teacher who never does it, well, maybe I will just develop this skill if I follow your steps.
I wish I had that recipe.
The secret one.
Yeah. I think it's more just, as I say, it's about really wanting. I think if you really, if you pick up a course book or some material and you think, well, I'm not sure that I would read it in this way, or that sounds maybe not the most inspiring activity, then I think, think about how you would read that kind of text and what you would really do with it and what your thoughts are on it.
That's a very interesting perspective, you see, because previously in our discussion, we were talking that you need to always to keep in mind the abilities of your students, the interests of your students. You need to keep in mind what the author has put inside this course book. You need to meet the criteria for your management team at school, for the national exams and so on. But Alex, you say a very nice idea that first of all, you need to listen to yourself, because it's you who are adapting everything. It's you who just creating the scaffolding and so on and so forth. So it's a really nice advice to, first of all, just to listen to yourself. Yeah, because we are experts, and we have a lot of experience how to do it. So that's a very nice motto, which we need to put above the doors to our classrooms. Yeah. Alex, thank you very much. A very inspirational workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll remember it. So how would you do it? Interesting for yourself first.
Do it interesting for yourself first. Great. Elena, we're going to pass over to you. So what's your presentation is going to be about?
I'm going to talk about how to gamify a course book. And I would like to start with this picture. Well, actually, it was borrowed from a Nile a material development course. I was a student some time ago there, and they started their course with this question. So what is a course book for you? Yeah, and we all had just to think about it. Well, actually,
that's the summary of our discussion previously. As you can see, all the key points are here.
Definitely, it's not. Well, as I already mentioned, it's for me, it's like a guideline and also resource bank. I would never be able just to design my own materials, like working so many hours every day. And well, I don't think that they will be good enough if I could do it. Okay, so but students don't like course books.
Yeah, they do.
We conducted a survey in the language school, which I owned some years ago. And we asked our students, what do they want the new academic year to look like? And every student said, okay, we want to learn English, but we don't want to use course books. And we do hate them because they've got this idea, okay, if it is a course book, that means this is lesson, this is school, and school is boring. Okay, and if I go to a private school, okay, I want just to be...
difference.
I want to feel this difference. And I want to tell about one more case. I was playing with my students a game. It was a 8-lesson long role-play game. And they failed one of the challenges at some point. And just to keep on playing, they had to give me a very big amount of their points just to survive, just to heal themselves. And one girl didn't want to do it. And all her group mates addressed her, Lena. She was also Lena, like every girl in Russia. Every other girl in Russia.
Typical name, yeah.
Lena, do you want just to die in this haunted house? That was a game about. Do you want to die and go back to a boring course book? So that was like a very vivid association. Well,
was Lena banished to the dimension of course books?
No. Well, she just decided, okay, here are my points, you can have them. Okay, let's stay in the game.
Tough choice.
Tough. So, but what can we do about it? Well, actually, if you have a look at any course book, we will see that any unit design is pretty much the same. We start with some matching activities, like match words from the box and pictures. Then we do some listen and point, listen and repeat activities. Then we will have some kind of gap fill. And you will wind up with make true sentences
by
about yourself.
Create a
talk-
project. Yeah. A project.
I'll just ask something. Yeah, and just as Alex said, okay, when I have a look at a course book, I don't see like exercises in the book. I see materials for games. So as you see like ready-made materials for some authentic tasks, I see just game, and it's a skill. Any teacher can develop it.
So it's not a course book; it's like a source book.
Yeah, it's a source book. Yeah, it's a source book. So let's have a look at the first. Oops, sorry. Activity, exercise every course book has. Match pictures and words. Actually, if we think about games, which game it would be? It would be memory game. Yeah, because what you do in memory? You just match. You don't talk. It's not a speaking game. You just match silently pictures and words, or maybe some ideas, maybe definitions and words. But so you just do it, and you can use it as an introductory activity, well, as a presentation activity as well, and to see how many matches students can make. Or you can play a voting game. Like every student has got a set of new words on word cards, and you just show a picture, or you say something, maybe explain some context, and they vote which word it might be. And it is much more
trying to guess the meaning.
To guess the meaning. Yes, I don't know these words, not yet, but well, this is a good start. And so when I work, my students think that we never use a course book in our lessons, but we always do exercises from course books. It just.
We hope that your students are not watching this presentation, or their world will never be the same after yours.
So the truth revealed. Next exercise, listen and point. So bingo. This is a game, which is actually an exercise, listen and point. And so this is a Znania platform, and I do it on this platform quite often because so there is, well, students can hear the words there, and then they just click on the picture, and so the pictures are very easily generated actually. And this is like just we do this exercise, listen and point. Another exercise, listen and repeat. Okay, well, actually, many years ago, I skipped this type of exercise because I could never imagine how I would make my students repeat after the audio. So it's so boring.
And we also do not have enough time for that. We just can pass over to the more specific tasks, or bigger tasks and so on.
But actually, we can play Clever Parrots game. So you show flashcard with the word, and you say this word. But sometimes the words which you say and the pictures you show, they don't match. And the point is students have to repeat only the words which match. And when I do this activity, usually I try to make them say the words with the most difficult pronunciation. And it's very good practice, actually. Or I like playing another game with my students. I call it laser game, like when you want to rob a bank and you have just to pass without being noticed through this laser race. So you take word cards or flashcards and you put all your students in a line. And the first student says the word and passes the card over his or her head to the next student. The next player, the next student repeats this word and passes it between his legs to the next student. Okay. So it's like a very good TPR activity. And it makes this dull repetition a little bit more interesting, actually. So you can do it. You can try it. Adults love this activity as well.
And that's a very nice PE integration as well, when you're trying to pass it backwards and so on and so forth.
So English and fitness. Okay. And I think. And well, maybe the most boring exercise type of exercise: make true sentences about yourself. Just imagine 2 teenage boys. Now they have to talk and tell something about themselves to this.
Something true about themselves.
It's quite boring actually. And well, it is impossible if it is an adult student or if it is a young learner. Well, they'll do it, but teenagers and well, actually, I in my teaching practice I focus on teens. Well, I work with teens primarily. So you can play basketball game. You can see it on the picture. So it's a training session with teachers, but still they're playing this game. So you just put your target vocabulary in any way on the floor, like pictures or word cards or maybe something else. And then when you have to say something about yourself using this target vocabulary, you stop at each picture and you produce a sentence. And your goal is actually to score a ball because at the end of this line there is a basket and you have a ball. And the closer you are, so more chances you have just to score the ball.
So you see, it's pretty interesting that English task here is like a secondary objective. Yeah, the main objective is to score the ball, and it doesn't feel like a dull task that we need all to do, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and this is the most important thing. You have to give this aim, goal, understand why am I doing it? If I'm a teenage student, I don't want to study English for my future job. Well, so my future job, okay, when I'm 20, you know, nobody lives so long. Okay, I had a conversation with my students. They are 13 now, and we discussed different life stages. And they said that, okay, being a young adult when you are 19 or 20, it is good. You can have your own money, but you are so old. So this is their perspective of age. And of course, well, they want just to have some kind of game aim. So why I have to do this or that task. And when I work online, I just change this activity a little bit. So we cross lava with my students. And
floor is lava. Floor is lava.
Yeah, floor. Nice. But yeah, and you can see I just take screenshots of my students, and they like seeing themselves on the screen and doing something. Okay, and if they make a mistake, they just fall into this lava, and then it's a computer game, so they've got more a few lives, and they can restart the game again. So a failure is just a way of learning something. Okay, and so what about this final exercise? Discuss the questions. One of the most boring one as well, in my opinion. When it is very difficult to make teenagers talk.
Yeah, to make it productive.
Yeah, and to make it productive. So so I also want to give them some meaning in this activity. And first, so what we can do, they can choose the questions they want to discuss. We don't start with question number 1, but they vote for the question which is the most interesting for them. And this is like, they make this meaningful choice, and that means that, okay, now they have some kind of intrinsic motivation to discuss this
they're
question.
Responsible for their choice as well.
Yeah. And then just another problem for this discussion question exercises is that, well, students, they really don't have any ideas. They don't know what to say. Just imagine balanced diet. So what is the balance? I'm 12, I'm 13, maybe fast food is good for your health, and this is what I think, yeah? Okay, so just try to work with visuals and with drawing. Well, everybody likes drawing. Well, actually, no matter how old you are. And so we can start with the spider diagram, and each student gets a piece of paper with a spider diagram and balanced diet. So what is it? I draw something like this apple. Then I pass it to the next student. I get another spider diagram from the student who is sitting on the right, and I draw something else. And well, actually, at the end, we've got very lot of posters. And this is a very good tool to start discussion. Now, everybody is interested. Why did you draw these? Yeah. What made you...
Take a look at my painting, take a look at my picture.
Okay, and then, well, it's like authentic discussion, actually.
Absolutely.
Okay, so these just a few activities which you can do instead of exercises. And, well, actually, if you do it every time, so you will have an eye for these, like, games. So you open a course book and you see, okay, this exercise I'm going to do in this way, this in this way. Okay, actually... I collected all this experience in a handbook. That's why I asked you about your handbook. Maybe you have got as well.
I'll start writing.
Okay, just start writing. There are like about 47 pages of activities for each type of exercise, like traditional, popular type of exercises. And so you can choose the ones which you like. So we've got here like for presentations, exercises for presentation stage, for practice stage, and for production stage. And I've got a present for all our viewers, some pages you can get if you follow this QR code.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like, first of all, to say a big thank you for giving such brilliant presentations. You see, it's pretty interesting how you highlighted that we do not need to completely drop the course book, that we need to look at it as the source book. And it's pretty much summarizes it that every time when we see a kind of a task, we need to think, first of all, how would I like to do it? Yeah, and how would I like to deliver it to my students? And I really like your idea, Yelena, about that we need to create a kind of goal where learning English, not because we are all here in this classroom and we've got 40 minutes to discuss I don't know, present continuous or discuss the balanced diet, but we need a certain goal. Why do we do this?
And we work with Generation Y, as they call now, well, modern teenagers, because they always ask, why should I do it? And if you don't give them the answers, they won't do it.
Yeah. And if you don't make it authentic, because we can, of course, why do I need English if we only answer true or false questions, or if we just complete the gaps in it?
Yeah, well, I mean, they also have, Generation Y, they have so many other things they could be doing instead of being in the class with the coursebook. So a lot of them are calling to use things like YouTube and other sources out there that they would be using if they weren't in the classroom anyway. So I think bringing some of these things into the classroom as well is very good.
Very good point which you made, that we don't compete with like boring course books. We compete with outer world, which is so much more interesting than our classroom.
So our task is not to compete with it, but to bring it here.
Into the classroom.
But to bring it, to make the learning real life. To bring life in the learning. Okay, thank you very much for your brilliant ideas. I hope that our audience have found some answers for their questions. I will definitely use your ideas with on my lessons on Monday. I will definitely share your ideas with my students. And to summarize everything that we have said today, using a very nice metaphor, course books are pretty much like cookbooks, as Elena said, You can strictly follow the recipe. You can add some fusion to it if you like. You can always adapt if you don't have like the fresh garlic, as Alex said.
Powder.
You can always improvise and so on and so forth. So it's only up to you. And a very nice idea that we have seen today is that, first of all, that you need to ask when you're trying to do a lesson is to ask yourself, so how would I react to this type of activity? And how would I like to deliver it to my students? So we definitely are not going to take the job out of the course writers, of the course book writers. They can be, they can be safe. So we're not competing with them. We're not competing with anyone. We are trying to bring more life to our classrooms. We are trying to show us the beauty of English language and how vivid is it in our classrooms. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that our session was pretty insightful and was nice for you. So feel free to ask any questions in our social networks or contact our speakers. So, and see you in the next session next month. Thank you.